साक्षाधरितेन समस्तशास्त्रैः वृत्तस्तथा भापत एव सद्भिः साक्षाधरितेन समस्तशास्त्रैः वृत्तस्तथा भापत एव सद्भिः किन्तु प्रभु प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरस्य चरणारविन्दम् किन्तु प्रभु प्रिय एव तस्य वन्दे गुरस्य चरणारविन्दम् संसारधामानललितलोक प्राणाय पारिण घनाघनत्यम् सकलन गुणार्णवश वन्दे गुरश्री चरणारविन्दम् यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसाद यस्य प्रसादात् न गति कुतोऽपि यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसाद यस्य प्रसादात् न गति कुतोऽपि दयं स्तुवं तस्य यशस्वी सन्धं दयं स्तुवं तस्य यशस्वी सन्धं वन्दे गुरश्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरश्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरश्री चरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरश्री चरणारविन्दम् संसारतापानलनिरलोक प्राणाय कारुण्य घनाघनत्यम् कल्याण गुणार्णवश वन्दे गुरश्री चरणारविन्दम् 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
On Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think our good friend Vishwakarma doesn't seem to be available today, so you're going to be stuck with me for a little while. This Chaitanya Charitamrita is the summary of the life and teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, written and compiled by Krishnadas Kaviraj, one of the celebrated associates of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And as part of this program, we occasionally open the floor for some lively discussion. So today, what we will do is we will have an extended reading, but trying to open the floor for discussion on various issues that are of concern to various devotees. So for the time being, what we will do is we will go on with our recitation of the invocation, and we will discuss some matters with regard to the process of bhakti, as to why is it that some devotees seem to follow the path very nicely, and some other devotees seem to follow for some time, but then they tend to swerve or deviate. Prabhupada in the Srila Prabhupada in his Bhagavad Gita commentaries does mention that a person has to be on guard to follow properly, otherwise there can be accidents. And Prabhupada compares that even on a royal road, which is usually very nicely maintained, which was usually nicely maintained, there's always the possibility of accidents. So similarly, in the path of bhakti, we see that there are different devotees. They do very nicely for some time. They practice nicely. They chant nicely. They make good advancement by the mercy of Lord Krishna, by the mercy of the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. But then something happens. What happens? They slacken off, or they associate with unwanted persons, or they get swayed away by the materialistic energy, Maya, again. Interestingly, in Maya, the word Maya in Sanskrit, there are 2 different meanings explained by Srila Prabhupada. One meaning is ma, which means not. Ya means this, to be in illusion, not this. Another meaning, which is explained by Srila Prabhupada in the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the word Maya means mercy, kindness. So a devotee has to receive the kindness, the mercy of the spiritual master to be able to come out of Maya or illusion. And that mercy comes when a devotee is very serious to surrender and to follow the instruction of the spiritual master. Now, there's many different instructions. We know that. We know that Srila Prabhupada told devotees to follow the 4 regulative principles. That is well known. That is not a secret. And another principle also, as part of the no gambling principle, is no mental speculation. In other words, one cannot invent or manufacture his own way of following the spiritual master. One is to follow the spiritual master according to the desire and instruction of the Acharya. Srila Prabhupada in his books, and specifically in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, has often said that various members of the institution of his Guru Maharaj, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, namely the Gaudiya Math, they interpreted their own instructions. They concocted various ways, and eventually, because of whimsical ways, the entire mission was lost. So a devotee has to be very careful to learn from history. Now, this is not very difficult to do. It requires some sincerity and some dedication. It is not complicated. It is not something which is beyond the capacity of any sincere devotee. Any sincere devotee can understand Srila Prabhupada's teachings and instruction, provided one does not go down the path of deviation, of mental speculation. Let me give an example. In California, in the state to the north of California, Oregon, there's a lot of official roads. These are roads that are recognized by the government, that are maintained by different levels of government. But there's a lot of logging roads, people who cut trees for making paper or different purposes. They create roads in the forest. Now, these are not government roads. These are not roads that regular people usually travel on, although many times it is not forbidden. But you could not take your car on a road like that. Just where we live in California, in Twinehart, there are numerous such logging roads. In order to go on some of these roads, you would need special vehicle. Special vehicle means that is adapted to the very difficult conditions of these roads. Similarly, in the path of bhakti, one cannot engage in fanciful and nonsensical interpretations of the instruction and orders of the spiritual master, such as what took place in 1937 and what took place in the post-1977 Krishna Conscious Society, which Srila Prabhupada had started. Everybody knows our good friend and very serious devotee, Aprakrita Prabhu, was very dedicated to the process of bhakti. Let me give an example. Many years ago, on my way to visit my father when he was on the verge of death, Aprakrita in Montreal allowed us to live with him for a day or two. So one time at 2:30 in the morning, I heard some rambling and some noise, and I was wondering, what is this noise? That was Aprakrita getting up. Aprakrita used to chant over 20 to 25 rounds per day. He used to get up at 2:30 in the morning. He was very serious, very dedicated. And one major characteristic of Aprakrita was his complete laser focus, determination, and focus on Srila Prabhupada and his instruction. He was always preaching to whoever he met. He was preaching to many people in Europe. He was preaching to many people in Montreal, in Quebec, Canada, speaking in French and also in English. He had a wonderful website. He was holding programs, distributing books. He was a very serious, dedicated devotee like Nityānanda. And his departure, which took us by surprise, because I had spoken to him just 2 days earlier, but somewhere or other, Krishna took him back because he had such amazing, serious focus on Srila Prabhupada. Many of us are convinced that he went back home, back to Godhead. Just like Prabhupada said about Nityānanda, and Prabhupada said about Sudama Maharaj. So this was a very nice example of dedication, focus, and strict following that this exemplary devotee did. Now, also, we have numerous other examples of different devotees who took positions that were never authorized by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada gave all instructions for the practice of Krishna consciousness and the distribution or preaching of Krishna consciousness. It was not difficult to understand. The spreading of Krishna consciousness means it has to be done according to the instructions of the Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. And when devotees speculate or act in whimsical ways, then there's all kinds of problems that come up, such as what we've experienced since 1978. Why do these problems happen? Whimsical ways is one of them. Not following the instructions is another one of them. And then we've discussed this point about mental speculation of people who think that because Srila Prabhupada gave certain managerial powers or managerial authorities to some devotees, leading devotees, that this meant they could interpret everything whatever way they wanted. Personally, we have seen one of Srila Prabhupada's Sanskrit scholars, Panditji, who in 1978 very kindly and very nicely pleaded with some of these leading devotees and managers not to take a certain path of deviation, of false interpretation. Instead, he was ridiculed, he was ignored, he was insulted, and eventually he was driven out of the society. We have personally experienced a similar action from these managers. But the main point that this Panditji brought up was that what was being done in early 1978 was not according to the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, specifically in the last few months of his manifested presence. And why is this still important? Because it has never been rectified. It has never been straightened out. That is why whenever we have these classes, we start by explaining that these classes are being conducted on a basis of non-adulterated, original, non-interpolated books. Srila Prabhupada had given many instructions to many of his leaders explaining that these books should never be changed. Of course, under the influence of Maya, some individuals thought, oh, well, we're not changing, we're just editing. Well, that is simply nonsense, mental speculation. This book that we're about to read, Chaitanya Charitamrita, when we read, we are reading from the 1974 version, and this version very nicely explains there is no interpolation, no changing, and no change of the teachings and instruction of Srila Prabhupada. Now, this is not difficult to understand. It is not difficult to follow. But when people have a political motive to change the philosophy for their own self-aggrandizement, for their own self-promotion, they will start to tinker and adulterate the book. One example of this is right in the beginning of chapter 1. In this original book here, it's a little old, but the original text mentions that Jagannath Das Babaji initiated Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Oh, they did not like that. They did not want that. So they took that out. They edited that out because it did not fit into their so-called understanding of how initiation should be conducted in that society. Their understanding is not Srila Prabhupada's understanding, is not according to Srila Prabhupada's order. It is not according to Srila Prabhupada's last order for initiations in his society. They had some other idea. Now, we don't have time to discuss tonight all the different deviations, but this is a very grievous, a very serious example of what happened when the disciples manage the path of mental speculation. It is very dangerous for their own spiritual lives and very dangerous for everybody else. So let us start tonight. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, the all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you from Srimad Bhagavatam 1:1:1. Narayanam namaskritya Narayanam namaskritya Naram cheva narottamam Naram cheva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayam mudirayat Tato jayam mudirayat. One should utter the means of conquest, Srimad Bhagavatam, after offering respectful obeisances, one, to the personality of Godhead, Narayana, two, to the Naranarayana Rishi, who is the supermost human being, three, to the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, then four, to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, Srimad Bhagavatam 1:2-4. As we do every week when we conduct this reading and discussion, we read a few selected verses from Adi Lila, chapter 1, from text 18-22, explaining the meaning of this powerful transcendental literature and the benefit of hearing this Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityānanda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Glory to Sri Chaitanya and Nityānanda. Glory to Advaita Chandra, and glory to all the devotees of Sri Gaura, Lord Chaitanya. Next text. Eti na Thakur Gaudiya ke karye chanayatmasat. Eti nera charana vandana tire morenat. These three deities of Vrindavana, Madan Mohan, Govinda, and Gopinatha, have absorbed the heart and soul of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, followers of Lord Chaitanya. I worship their lotus feet, for they are the lords of my heart. Grantera Rambi Kori Mangala Charana Guru Vaishnav Bhagavan Tinera Smaranam. In the beginning of this narration, simply by remembering the spiritual master, the devotees of the Lord, and the personality of Godhead, I have invoked their benedictions. Tinera Smaranayai Vigna Vinashana Anayasayai Nijavanchita Purana. Such remembrance destroys all difficulties and very easily enables one to fulfill his own desire. Semangala Charanai Trivida Prakar Vastu Nirdesha Chirvada Namaskara. The invocation involved three processes: defining the objective, offering benedictions, and offering obeisances. It should be noted that one of these verses that we just read refers to removing of all obstacles, text number 21. Such remembrance destroys all difficulties and very easily enables one to fulfill his own desires. So this transcendental benediction that has been given by Krishnadas Kaviraj is very important for serious practitioners. We will proceed with our reading. This week we are reading from Adi Lila, chapter 5, text number 41. I believe we read most of the text, but did not completely finish. We will read the verse again. Vasudeva Sankarshana Pradyumnadi Ruddha Dvitiya Chaturvyahe Vituriya Vishuddha Vasudeva. The expansion name Vasudeva, Sankarshana, the expansion name Sankarshana, Pradyumna, the expansion name Pradyumna, Aniruddha, the expansion name Aniruddha, Dvitiya Chaturvyuha, the second quadruple expansion, this, Turiya, transcendental, Vishuddha, free from all material contamination. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha constitute this second quadruple. They are purely transcendental. Did we start to read this last week, Rupesh Prabhu? Or did we not finish the purport? Okay, we'll read the purport again. It's all transcendental nectar. This is a very long purport, so we will all enjoy. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sripad Shankaracharya has misleadingly explained the quadruple form, Chaturvyuha, is in his interpretation of the 42nd aphorism of the second kanda of chapter 2 of the Vedanta Sutras, Utpatti Asambhavat. In verses 41 through 47 of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami answers Sripad Shankaracharya's misleading objections to the personal feature of the Absolute Truth. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is not like a material object that can be known by experimental knowledge of sense perception. In the Narada Pancharatra, this fact has been explained by Narayana himself to Lord Shiva. But Shankaracharya, the incarnation of Shiva, under the order of Narayana, his master, had to mislead the monists who favor ultimate extinction. In the conditioned stage of existence, all living entities have four basic defects, of which one is the cheating propensity. Shankaracharya has carried this cheating propensity to the extreme to mislead the monist. Actually, the quadruple forms explained in the Vedic literature cannot be understood by the speculation of a conditioned soul. By the speculation of a conditioned soul. Just trying to see where we are here. The quadruple forms should therefore be accepted just as they are described. The authority of the Vedas is such that even if one does not understand something by his limited perception, he should accept the Vedic injunction and not create interpretation to suit his imperfect understanding. In his Shariraka Bhashya, however, Shankaracharya has increased the misunderstanding of the monist. The quadruple forms have a spiritual existence that can be realized in Vasudeva Sattva, Shuddha Sattva, or unqualified goodness, which accompanies complete absorption in the understanding of Vasudeva. The quadruple forms who are full of the six opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are the enjoyers of the internal potency, thinking the absolute personality of Godhead to be poverty-stricken or to have no potency, or, in other words, to be impotent, is simply rascaldom. This rascaldom is the profession of the conditioned soul. Is the profession of the conditioned soul, and it increases its bewilderment. One who cannot understand the distinctions between the spiritual world and material world has no qualification to examine or know the situation of the transcendental quadruple forms. In his commentaries on the second Kanda of the Vedanta Sutra, chapter 2, verses 42 to 45, His Holiness Sripad Shankaracharya has made a futile attempt to nullify the existence of these quadruple forms in the spiritual world. Shankaracharya says, verse 42, that devotees think the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Sri Krishna, to be one, to be free from material qualities, and to have a transcendental body full of bliss and eternal existence. He is the ultimate goal of the devotees who believe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands himself into four other eternal transcendental forms: Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. From Vasudeva, who is the primary expansion, comes Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, in that order. Another name of Vasudeva is Paramatma. Another name of Sankarshana is Jiva, the living entity. Another name of Pradyumna is mind. And another name of Aniruddha is Ahankara, false ego. Among these expansions, Vasudeva is considered the origin of material nature. Therefore, Shankaracharya says that Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha must be creations of that original cause. Great Soul assert that Narayana, who is known as Paramatma, the Supersoul, is beyond material nature. And this is in accordance with the statements of the Vedic literature. Mayavadis also agree that Narayana can expand himself in various forms. Shankara says that he does not attempt to argue that portion of the devotee's understanding, but he must protest the idea that Sankarshana is produced from Vasudeva, Pradyumna is produced from Sankarshana, and Aniruddha is produced from Pradyumna. For if Sankarshana is understood to represent the living entities created from the body of Vasudeva, the living entities would have to be non-eternal. The living entities are supposed to be freed from material contamination by engaging in prolonged temple worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, reading Vedic literature, and performing yoga and pious activities to attain the Supreme Lord. But if the living entities had been created from material nature, at a certain point, they would be non-eternal and would have no chance to be liberated and associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When a cause is nullified, its results are nullified. In the second chapter of Vedanta Sutra, Acharya Vedavyasa has also refuted the conception that the living beings were ever born, not mashruter nitvatascha tabhyaha, because there is no creation for the living entities, they must be eternal. Shankaracharya says, verse 43, that devotees think that Pradyumna, who is considered to represent the senses, has sprung from Samkarshana, who is considered to represent the living entities. But we cannot actually experience that a person can produce senses. Devotees also say that from Pradyumna has sprung Aniruddha, who is considered to represent the ego. But Shankaracharya says that unless the devotees can show how ego and the means of knowledge can generate from a person, such an explanation of the Vedanta Sutra cannot be accepted, for no other philosophers accept the sutras in that way. Shankaracharya also says, verses 44, that he cannot accept the devotee's idea that Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are equally as powerful as the absolute personality of Godhead, full in the six opulences of knowledge, wealth, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation, and free from the flaw of generation at a certain point. Even if they are full expansions, the flaw of generation remains. Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, being distinct individual persons, cannot be one. Therefore, if they are accepted as absolute, full, and equal, there would have to be many personalities of Godhead. But there's no need to accept that there are many personalities of Godhead, because acceptance of one omnipotent God is sufficient for all purposes. The acceptance of more than one God is contradictory to the conclusion that Lord Vasudeva, the absolute personality of God, it is one without a second. Even if we agree to accept that the quadruple forms of Godhead are all identical, we cannot avoid the incongruous flaw of non-eternity. Unless we accept that there are some differences amongst the personalities, there is no meaning to the idea that Sankarsana is an expansion of Vasudeva, Pradyumna is an expansion of Sankarsana, and Aniruddha is an expansion of Pradyumna. There must be a distinction between cause and effect. For example, a pot is distinct from the earth from which it is made, and therefore we can ascertain that the earth is the cause and the pot is the effect. Without such distinctions, there is no meaning to cause and effect. Furthermore, the followers of the Pancharatric principles do not accept any differences in knowledge and qualities between Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. The devotees accept all these expansions to be one, but why should they restrict oneness to these quadruple expansions? Certainly, we should not do so for all living entities, from Brahma to the insignificant ant, or expansion of Vasudeva, as accepted in all the Shrutis and Smritis. In his Lagu Bhagavat, Shankaracharya also says, verse 45, that the devotees who follow the Pancharatra state that God's qualities and God himself as the owner of the qualities are the same. But how can the Bhagavata school state that the six opulences, wisdom, wealth, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation, are identical with Lord Vasudeva? This is impossible. In his Lagu Bhagavatamrita, verses 80-83, Srila Rupa Goswami has refuted the charges directed against the devotees by Sripad Shankaracharya regarding their explanation of the quadruple forms Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. He says that these four expansions of Narayana are present in the spiritual sky, where they are famous as Mahavasta. Among them, Vasudeva is worshipped within the heart by meditation because he is the predominating deity of the heart, as explained in Srimad Bhagavatam 4:323. Sankarsana, the second expansion, is Vasudeva's personal expansion for pastimes. And since he is the reservoir of all living entities, he is sometimes called Jiva. The beauty of Sankarsana is more than that of innumerable full moons radiating light beams. He is worshipable as the principle of ego. He has invested Anantadeva with all the potencies of sustenance. For the dissolution of the creation, he also exhibits himself as the supersoul in Rudra, irreligiosity, Ahi, the snake, Antaka, death, and the demons. Pradyumna, the third manifestation, appears from Samkarsana. Those who are especially intelligent worship this Pradyumna expansion of Samkarsana as the principle of the intelligence. The goddess of fortune always chants the glories of Pradyumna in the place known as Ilavrita Varsha, and she always serves him with great devotion. His complexion appears sometimes golden and sometimes bluish, like new monsoon clouds in the sky. He is the origin of the creation of the material world. He has invested his creative principle in Cupid. It is by his direction only that all men and demigods and other living entities function with energy for regeneration. Aniruddha, the fourth of the quadruple expansions, is worshipped by great sages and psychologists as the principle of the mind. His complexion is similar to the bluish hue of a blue cloud. He engages in the maintenance of the cosmic manifestation and is the supersoul of Dharma, the deity of religiosity, Manu, the progenitor of mankind, and the Devatas, demigods. The Moksha Dharma of Vedic scriptures indicates that Pradyumna is the deity of the total mind, whereas Aniruddha is the deity of the total ego. But previous statements regarding the quadruple forms are confirmed in the Pancharatra Tantras in all respects. In the Lagu Bhagavatamrita, verses 44-46, there's a lucid explanation of the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Negating Shankaracharya's statements, the Mahavaraha Purana declares, Sarvinityaha Shashvatascha Dehastasya Paratmanaha Anopadanarahita Nena Prakriti Jahakvachit. All the various expansions of the personality of Godhead are transcendental and eternal, and all of them repeatedly descend to all the different universes of the material creation. Their bodies, composed of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, are everlasting. There is no chance of their decaying, for they are not creations of the material world. Their form are concentrated spiritual existence, always complete with all spiritual qualities and devoid of material contamination. Confirming these statements, The Narada Pancharatra asserts, Manir yata vibhagena nilapitadi bhiryutaham rupa bedam avapnoti dhyan vedatatachutaham. The infallible personality of Godhead can manifest his body in different ways, according to different modes of worship, just as the Vaidurya gem can manifest itself in various colors such as blue and yellow. Each incarnation is distinct from all the others. This is possible by the Lord's inconceivable potency, by which he can simultaneously represent himself as one as various partial forms and as the origin of these partial forms. Nothing is impossible for his inconceivable potencies. Krishna is one without a second, but he manifests himself in different bodies, as stated by Narada in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Chitram bahuda bhutva chitram bhatetadekena vapusha yugapak pritat griheshu dvesta sahasram striya eka udavahat. It is wonderful indeed that one Krishna has simultaneously become different Krishnas in 16,000 palaces to accept 16,000 queens as his wives. Bhagavatam 10:69-2. The Padma Purana also explains Sadevu Bahuda Bhutva Nirgunaha Purushottamaha Iki Bhuya Punashete Nirdosho Hariradikrita. The same personality of Godhead Purushottama, the original person who is always devoid of material qualities and contamination, can exhibit himself in various forms and at the same time lie down in one form. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, Yajanti tvam mayastvam tvai bahumurti ekamurtikam. O my Lord, although you manifest yourself in varieties of forms, you are one without a second. Therefore, pure devotees concentrate upon you and worship only you. From Srimad Bhagavatam 10:47. In the Kurma Purana, it is said, Ashtulaszchana nuscheva, stulo nuscheva sarvataha, avarnaha sarvata proktaha, shyamo raktantalochanaha. The Lord is personal, although impersonal. He is atomic, although great, and he is blackish and has red eyes, although he is colorless. By material calculation, all this may appear contradictory. But if we understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has inconceivable potencies, we can accept these facts as eternally possible in him. In our present condition, we cannot understand the spiritual activities and how they occur. But although they are inconceivable in the material context, we should not disregard such contradictory conceptions. Although it is apparently inconceivable, it is quite possible for the Absolute to reconcile all opposing elements. Srimad Bhagavatam established this in the 6th canto. Canto 6, chapter 9, texts 34 and 37. O my Lord, your transcendental pastimes and enjoyment all appear inconceivable because they're not limited by the causal and effective actions of material thought. You can do everything without performing bodily work. The Vedas say that the Absolute Truth has multifarious potencies and does not need to do anything personally. My dear Lord, You are entirely devoid of material qualities. Without anyone's help, you can create, maintain, and dissolve the entire qualitative material manifestation. Yet in all such activities, you do not change. You do not accept the results of your activities, unlike ordinary demons and demigods who suffer or enjoy the reactions of their activities in the material world. Unaffected by the reactions of work, you eternally exist with your full spiritual potency. This we cannot fully understand. Because you are unlimited in your six opulences, no one can count your transcendental qualities. Philosophers and other thoughtful persons are overwhelmed by the contradictory manifestations of the physical world and the propositions of logical arguments and judgments, because they are bewildered by word jugglery and disturbed by the different calculations of the scriptures. Their theories cannot touch you, who are the ruler and controller of everyone, and whose glories are beyond conception. Your inconceivable potency keeps you unattached to the mundane qualities, surpassing all conceptions of material contemplation. Your pure transcendental knowledge keeps you beyond all speculative processes. By your inconceivable potency, there is nothing contradictory in you. People may sometimes think of you as impersonal or personal, but you are one. For persons who are confused or bewildered, a rope may manifest itself as different kinds of snakes. For similar confused persons who are uncertain about you, you create various philosophical methods in pursuance of their uncertain position. We should always remember the differences between spiritual and material actions. The Supreme Lord, being all spiritual, can perform any act without extraneous help. In the material world, if we want to manufacture an earthen pot, we need the ingredients, a machine, and also a laborer. But we should not extend this idea to the actions of the Supreme Lord, for he can create anything in a moment without that which appear necessary in our own conception. When the Lord appears as an incarnation to fulfill a particular purpose, this does not indicate that he is unable to fulfill it without appearing. He can do anything simply by his will, but by his causeless mercy, he appears to be dependent upon his devotees. He appears as the son of Yashoda Mata, not because he's dependent on her care, but because he accepts such a role by his causeless mercy. When he appears for the protection of his devotees, he naturally accepts trials and tribulations on their behalf. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord, being equally disposed towards every living being, has no enemies and no friends, but he has special affection for a devotee who always thinks of him in love. Therefore, neutrality and partiality are both amongst the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and they are properly adjusted amongst the transcendental qualities of the Lord. And they are properly adjusted by his inconceivable energy. The Lord is Parabrahman, or the source of the impersonal Brahma, which is all-pervading feature of neutrality. In his personal feature, however, as the owner of all transcendental opulences, the Lord displays his partiality by taking the side of his devotees. Partiality, neutrality, and all such qualities are present in God. Otherwise, they could not be experienced in the creations. Since he is the total existence, all things are properly adjusted in the absolute. In the relative world, such qualities are displayed in a perverted manner. And therefore, we experience non-duality as a perverted reflection. Because there is no logic to explain how things happen in the realm of spirit, the Lord is sometimes described as being beyond the range of experience. But if we simply accept the Lord's inconceivability, we can then adjust all things in him. Non-devotees cannot understand the Lord's inconceivable energy, and consequently for them, it is said that he is beyond the range of conceivable expression. The author of the Brahma Sutra accepts this fact and says, Shrutestu Shabdamulatvat, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not conceivable by an ordinary man. He can be understood only through the evidence of Vedic injunctions. The Skanda Purana confirms, Achintaha karoye bhava, natam starkena yojayet. Matters inconceivable to a common man should not be a subject for argument. We find very, where are we here? Okay, we find very wonderful qualities even in material jewels and drugs. Indeed, their qualities often appear inconceivable. Therefore, if we do not attribute inconceivable potencies to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we cannot establish his supremacy. It is because of these inconceivable potencies that the glories of the Lord have always been accepted as difficult to understand. Ignorance and the juggling of words are very common in human society, but they do not help one understand the inconceivable energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we accept such ignorance and word jugglery, we cannot accept the Supreme Lord's perfection in 6 opulences. For example, one of the opulences of the Supreme Lord is complete knowledge. Therefore, how could ignorance be conceivable in him? Vedic instructions and sensible arguments establish that the Lord's maintaining the cosmic manifestation and simultaneously being indifferent to the activities of its maintenance cannot be contradictory because of his inconceivable energy. To a person who is always absorbed in the thought of snakes, a rope always appears as a snake. And similarly, to a person bewildered by material qualities and devoid of knowledge of the absolute, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears according to diverse, bewildered conclusions. Someone might argue that the absolute would be affected by duality if he were both all cognizance, Brahman, and the personality of Godhead with 6 opulences in full, Bhagavan. To refute such an argument, the aphorism Swarupa Dvayam Ikshate declares that in spite of appearances, there is no sense of duality in the absolute, for he is but one in diverse manifestations. Understanding that the absolute displays varied pastime by the influence of his energies at once removes the apparent incongruity of his inconceivably opposite energies. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:4-16 gives the following description of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. Karamani aniyasya bhavo bhavasyate durgashrayo atari bayat palayanam kalatmano yat pramada yutashrayah svatman rateh kidyati dirvidam miha Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to do, he nevertheless acts. Although he is always unborn, he nevertheless takes birth. Although he is time, fearful to everyone, he flees Mathura in fear of his enemy to take shelter in a fort. And although he is self-sufficient, he marries 16,000 women. These pastimes seem like bewildering contradictions, even to the most intelligent. Had these activities of the Lord not been a reality, sages would not have been puzzled by them. Therefore, such activities should never be considered imaginary. Whenever the Lord desires, his inconceivable energy, Yogamaya, serves him in creating and performing such pastimes. The scriptures known as the Pancharatra Shastras are recognized Vedic scriptures that have been accepted by the great acharyas. These scriptures are not products of the modes of passion and ignorance. Learned scholars and brahmanas, therefore, always refer to them as Sattvata Samhitas. The original speaker of these scriptures is Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is especially mentioned in the Moksha Dharma 349-68, which is a part of the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. Liberated sages like Narada and Vyasa, who are free from the four defects of conditioned souls, are the propagators of these scriptures. Sri Narada Muni is the original speaker of the Pancharatra Shastra. Srimad Bhagavatam is also considered a Sattvata Samhita. Indeed, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam. Srimad Bhagavatam is a spotless Purana. Malicious editors and scholars who attempt to misrepresent the Pancharatra Shastras to refute its regulations are most abominable. In the modern age, such malicious scholars have even commented misleadingly upon Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken by Krishna, to prove that there's no Krishna. How the Mayavadis have misrepresented the Pancharatra Vidhi will be shown below. So we will continue this purport next week during the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita reading. And for now, we can open discussion with Nityānanda Prabhu. Any points or questions you would like to discuss? Hare Krishna. Nityānanda Prabhu, are you there? I guess not. Does anybody else have any question? Does anybody else have any questions? I guess not. I guess we will continue reading or discuss some interesting topics. I wanted to discuss a pastime in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was cleansing the Gundicha temple. This is especially significant because Srila Prabhupada explains very, very important points for any sadhaka or practitioner of devotional service. This particular pastimes is from Madhya Lila, chapter 12, text 135. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 12, text 135. I will read the text and then we will discuss some selected portions of the purport. Imata pura dvara agi patayata sakala shodila taha ye kevarni bekata. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Outside the gateway of the temple All the roads were also cleansed, and no one could tell exactly how this was done. Purport. In commenting on the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura says that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as the world leader, was personally giving instructions on how one should receive Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within one's cleansed and pacified heart. If one wants to see Krishna seated in his heart, he must first cleanse the heart, as prescribed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshastaka, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. In this age, everyone's heart is especially unclean, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Hridyantos Tahyabadrani. To wash away all dirty things accumulated within the heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised everyone to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. The first result will be that the heart is cleansed. Cheto Darpana Marjana. Similarly, in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.17 confirms this statement. Srinvatam Svakataha Krishnaha Punyasravana Kirtanaha Hridyantasto Hyabadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. If a devotee at all wants to cleanse his heart, he must chant and hear the glories of the Lord, Sri Krishna. Srinvatam Svakataha Krishnaha. This is a simple process. Krishna himself will help cleanse the heart because he's already seated there. Krishna wants to continue living within the heart, and the Lord wants to give directions, but one has to keep his heart as clean as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu kept the Gundicha temple. The devotee, therefore, has to desire his heart just as the Lord cleansed the Gundicha temple. In this way, one can be pacified and enriched in devotional service. If the heart is filled with straw, grains of sand, weeds, or dust, in other words, anya bhilasa purna, one cannot enthrone the Supreme Personality of Godhead there. The heart must be cleansed of all material motives brought about through fruitive work, speculative knowledge, the mystic yoga system, and so many other forms of so-called meditation. The heart must be cleansed without ulterior motive. As Srila Rupa Goswami says, Anya bilasita shunyam jnana karmadhyanavritam. In other words, there should not be any external motive. One should not attempt material upliftment, understanding the Supreme by speculative knowledge, fruitive activity, severe austerity and penance, and so on. All these activities are against the natural growth of spontaneous love of Godhead. As soon as there are present within the heart, as soon as these are present within the heart should be understood to be unclean and therefore unfit to serve as Krishna's sitting place. We cannot perceive the Lord's presence in our hearts unless our hearts are cleansed. A material desire is explained as a desire to enjoy the material world to its fullest extent. In modern language, This is called economic development. An inordinate desire for economic development is considered to be like straws and grains of sands within the heart. If one is overly engaged in material activity, the heart would always remain disturbed. As stated by Narottam Das Thakura, Samsara Vishanale, Divanishi Hiyajvale, Judaite Nakainu Upai. In other words, endeavor for material opulence is against the principle of devotional service. Material enjoyment includes activities such as great sacrifices for auspicious activity, charity, austerity, elevation to the higher planetary system, and even living happily within the material world. Modernized material benefits are like the dust of material contamination. When this dust is agitated by the whirlwind of fruitive activity, it overcomes the heart. Thus, the mirror of the heart is covered with dust. There are many desires for performing auspicious and inauspicious activities, but people do not know how life after life they are keeping their hearts unclean. One who cannot give up the desire for fruitive activity is understood to be covered by the dust of material contamination. Karmis generally think that the interaction of fruitive activities can be counteracted by another karma or fruitive activity. This is certainly a mistaken conception. If one is deluded by such a conception, he is cheated by his own activity. Such activities have been compared to an elephant's baiting. An elephant may bait very thoroughly, but as soon as it comes out of the river, it immediately takes some sand from the land and throws it all over its body. If one suffers due to his past fruitive activities, he cannot counteract his suffering by performing auspicious activities. The sufferings of human society cannot be counteracted by material plans. The only way suffering can be mitigated is by Krishna consciousness. When one takes to Krishna consciousness and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, beginning with chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord, the cleansing of the heart begins. When the heart is actually cleansed, one can clearly see the Lord sitting there without any disturbance. In Srimad Bhagavatam 9.468, the Lord confirms that he sits within the heart of the pure devotee. Sadhavo hridayam makhyam, sadhunam hridayam twaham. Impersonal speculation, monism merging into the existence of the Supreme, speculative knowledge, mystic yoga, and meditation are all compared to grains of sand. They simply cause irritation to the heart. No one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by such activities, nor do we give the Lord a chance to sit in our hearts peacefully. Rather, the Lord is simply disturbed by them. Sometimes yogis and jnanis in the beginning take to the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra as a way to begin their various practices. But when they falsely think they have attained release from the bondage of material existence, they give up chanting. They do not consider that the ultimate goal is the form of the Lord or the name of the Lord. Such unfortunate creatures are never favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for they do not know what devotional service is. Lord Krishna describes them in the Bhagavad Gita in this way. Tanaham dvishataha kururan samsareshu naradamam Shipami ajasramashubhan asurishu iva yonishu. By his practical examples, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has shown us that all the grains of sand must be picked up thoroughly and thrown outside. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also cleansed the outside of the temple, fearing that the grains of sand would again come within. In this connection, this is a very important part of this purport. Of course, every part described by Srila Prabhupada is important, but this is quite significant. In this connection, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakura explains that even though one may become free from the desire for fruitive activity, sometimes the subtle desire for fruitive activity again comes into being within the heart. One often thinks of conducting business to improve devotional activity, but the contamination is so strong that it may later develop into misunderstanding, described as kutinati, fault finding, and pratishtasa, the desire for name and fame and for high position, jiva himsa, envy of other living entities, nishiddhachara, accepting things forbidden in the Shastra, kama, desire for material gain, and puja, hankering for popularity. The word kutinati means duplicity. As an example of pratishtasa, one may attempt to imitate Srila Haridas Thakur by living in a solitary place. One's real desire may be for name and fame. In other words, one thinks that fools will accept one to be as good as Haridas Thakur just because one lives in a solitary place. These are all material desires. A neophyte devotee is certain to be attacked by other material desires as well, namely desires for women and money. In this way, the heart is again filled with dirty things and becomes harder and harder, like that of a materialist. Gradually, one desires to become a reputed devotee or an avatar incarnation. I want to emphasize this point here. Gradually, one desires to become a reputed devotee or an avatar incarnation. Now, this is a very important point, and we have seen this with various contemporaries and various people, especially in Vrindavan and other places, of people who think that becoming a reputed devotee or an avatar is somewhat of an accomplishment. This is not the standard of pure devotional service. Let us continue Srila Prabhupada's explanation. The word jiva himsa, envy of other living entities, actually means stopping the preaching of Krishna consciousness. Preaching work is described as paropakara, welfare activity for others. Those who are ignorant of the benefits of devotional service must be educated by preaching. If one stops preaching and simply sits down in a solitary place, he is engaging in material activity. If one desires to make a compromise with the Mayavadis, he is also engaged in material activity. A devotee should never make compromises with non-devotees. By acting as a professional guru, mystic yogi, or miracle man, one may cheat and bluff the general public and gain fame as a wonderful mystic. But all of this is considered to be dust, straw, and grains of sand within the heart. In addition, one should follow the regulative principles and not desire illicit sex, gambling, intoxicants, or meat. To give us practical instructions, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cleanses the temple twice. His second cleansing was more thorough. The idea was to throw away all the stumbling blocks on the path of devotional service. He cleansed the temple with firm conviction, as is evident from his using his own personal garments for cleaning. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to see personally that the temple was thoroughly cleansed to the standard of clean marble. Clean marble gives a cooling effect. Devotional service means attaining peace from all disturbances caused by material contamination. In other words, it is the process by which the mind is cooled. The mind can be peaceful and thoroughly cleansed when one no longer desires anything but devotional service. Even though all dirty things may be cleansed away, sometimes subtle desires remain in the heart for impersonalism, monism, success, and the four principles of religious activity, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. All these are like spots on a clean cloth. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also wanted to cleanse all these away. By his practical activity, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu informed us how to cleanse our hearts. Once the heart is cleansed, we should invite Lord Sri Krishna to sit down, and we should observe the festival by distributing prasada and chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to teach every devotee by his personal behavior. Everyone who spreads the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepts a similar responsibility. The Lord was personally chastising and praising individuals in the course of the cleansing. And those who are engaged as acharyas must learn from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu how to train devotees by personal example. The Lord was very much pleased with those who could cleanse the temple by taking out undesirable things accumulated within. This is called anartha nivritti, cleansing the heart of all unwanted things. Thus, the cleansing of the Gundicha Mandir was conducted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to let us know how the heart should be cleansed and suited to receive Lord Sri Krishna and enable him to sit within the heart without disturbance. Now, somebody may ask, why is it that so much time is being spent on this purport? Well, the reason is this is a very, very important purport, because we see that Srila Prabhupada is explaining the first verse of Shikshastakam, Chetu Darpana Marjanam, with this purport. And the point that is being raised there about sometimes devotees, they swerve away, they deviate by trying to become reputed devotees or avatars. One should guard himself against these tendencies. Does anybody have any question or remarks, comments, chastisements, admonishments? Anybody welcome? Admonishments and chastisement is also welcome. You have a question, Mataji? Rochisa Mataji, do you have a question? I think you have to unmute. You have to unmute your system. We cannot hear you. Rupesh Prabhu, could you unmute Rochisa Mataji? We cannot hear her. You have to unmute your computer. We cannot hear you, Mataji. Rupesh Prabhu, could you unmute our system?
Please. Thank you.
Oh, now we can hear you. Now we can hear you. So kindly repeat your question again.
Thank you very much for that wonderful reading. It's very deep, very, very, very instructing for me. What I was studying Krishna book, and I saw that Lord Shiva fight with Krishna to save Banasura. And I was very surprised because Shiva is a devotee of Krishna. And he want to fight with him with many, many weapons one after another. And he keep on fighting and fighting. And you were talking about Maya at the beginning of the discussion. And I say, how can Maya? Shiva is a good devotee of Krishna. He's one of the best devotee of Krishna. How can he get in that much situation just to save Banasura from being killed? He sent his Shiva Jvara against Narayan Jvara, and they fight and they fight. And even at the end, the Shiva Jvara offer obeisances to Krishna. And after Shiva offer obeisances to Krishna and ask him to forgive him. But I was surprised to see how the illusion can be that much.
Okay, that's a very important question. C'est une question très importante, Mataji. The question is, how can Lord Shiva, who is considered a devotee of Lord Krishna, fight with Krishna? Now, it's important to remember who is Lord Shiva. Now, there's the one aspect, Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhuhu. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a description in the 11th canto that of all the Vaishnavas, Shambhu, or Lord Shiva, is the best devotee because he's always meditating upon Krishna. When we see pictures of Lord Shiva, he has a third eye. And sometimes people get confused. What is this third eye for? Because he's always meditating upon Lord Vishnu. Now, Lord Shiva in the Padma Purana has described that of all the forms of worship, Aradhanam Sarvesham, Vishnor Aradhanam Param, the highest form of worship is the worship of Lord Vishnu, of Lord Krishna. Tasmat Parataram Devi, but higher than this. My dear Devi, Lord Shiva is addressing his wife, Devi. Tasmat Param Devi, Vaishnavanam, that you worship the Vaishnava. If you worship the Vaishnava, that is the highest worship. Tadhyanam Samarchanam, that Lord Vishnu or anything related with Lord Vishnu. Now, with this aspect of Lord Shiva as a Vaishnava, there's another aspect. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the story of Ajamil, when the Vishnu Dutas try to take away Ajamil, when the Yamadutas try to take Ajamil, the Vishnu Dutas came and stopped them. They say, no, you cannot take this person. He's protected by Lord Vishnu. Lord Vishnu always protects his devotees. And within that conversation, there is a list of all the 12 Mahajans, the great authorities. Dwadasa Mahajana, I mean the 12 authorities in the science of devotional service. Les 12 autorités de la science du service dévotionnel. And what happened, Lord Shiva is described as one of the authorities.
Okay.
So this is a different aspect. Now, in this particular Leela, what Krishna cannot fight with just a regular person. It has to be a special person that Krishna will allow to fight with him. So therefore, why this fighting? Because this is part of the Leela, of the pastime of Lord Krishna, that he is fighting with Lord Shiva, because it has to be a special person who is going to engage in this fighting. But ultimately, the lesson from this, in the Krishna book, Prabhupada explains, the Narayana Astra, or the weapon of Lord Narayana, was stronger than the weapon of Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva was defeated. And when you look at the end, Lord Shiva is describing his obeisances to Lord Narayana, to Lord Krishna. So this is one angle. Now, there is another important aspect here, that Lord Krishna, it is called Achintya Shakti, as inconceivable potency. Il y a des puissances inconcevables, les puissances du Seigneur Krishna. The potency of Krishna cannot be conceived by an ordinary person, by an ordinary human being. That's why Jiva Goswami describes in his Sandarbha that in order to understand God, first one must understand Achintya Shakti, which is the Sanskrit term for inconceivable potency. La puissance du Seigneur, la puissance de Krishna. On ne peut pas comprendre avec notre cerveau limité. With our limited brain, we cannot understand. That is why there is warning in the Shastra. Natam starkena yojayat. One cannot understand Krishna simply by logic. But one has to accept by the authority of the Mahajanas, the great devotees. Mahajano yenagatasa pantaha. In order to understand Krishna, one should understand only through the explanations of the Mahajan. Just like in the Bhagavatam, there's the story of Lord Brahma, Chaturmukha Brahma, running after his daughter. And this can be very bewildering. How can he do something like that? And Prabhupada explained in the Bhagavatam that this incident happened before he heard the 4 essential verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. So in other words, there's always an explanation. There's always an explanation in the Shastra that is given. Just like we have so many different stories in the Shastra that seems to be very bewildering to an ordinary person. That is why Prabhupada explains that these books that he has given, everything is given there to explain these activities and properly understand the context. There's just like the activities of Bhaktivinoda Thakur can be sometimes very bewildering, because it's not that Bhaktivinoda Thakur became a great devotee. He always was a great devotee, but according to time, place, and circumstance, le temps, la place, les circonstances, il va manifester un pastime, une activité devotionnelle. In other words, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, according to time, place, and circumstance, was manifesting his activities, whether as a magistrate, whether he was engaging in so many seemingly mundane activities. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur was always a liberated soul. Similarly, Lord Shiva in this pastime, in order to fight with Lord Narayana, it has to be a very special devotee. Lord Narayana is not going to fight with a taxi driver in Montreal or in San Francisco. That's not how it works. It has to be a very special devotee. I hope this helped. There's a lot of other explanations by Srila Prabhupada about the activities of great acharyas, great liberated soul, and like that. But I believe your understanding from Krishna book was correct. I hope it helps.
Yes, it helps. Today is a special day. It's Prabhupada Disappearance Day.
Yes, very sweet.
Prabhupada Disappearance Day.
Very, very special, because Prabhupada explains in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, he lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. Also, on the Samadhi of Haridas Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was preaching, he wrote that he reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die. This is a misunderstanding which has infiltrated Vaishnava society, that after the Acharya departed, or Prabhupada sometimes use the word disappears, then the Acharya is no longer available. This is not the correct understanding. This is an understanding by persons who are influenced by Maya, or by the influence of the material energy, par l'influence de l'illusion, de Maya. I mean, we see in the Bhagavatam, in the 4th canto, there's a very nice purport where Prabhupada talks about his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he's explaining that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is preaching Krishna consciousness all over the world through his bona fide disciples. Now, bear in mind, this purport was written in 1973. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur departed in 1937. How is Prabhupada seeing that he's preaching in the current tense, present tense, that he is preaching now all over the world through his bona fide disciples. In other words, Srila Prabhupada was never thinking that his guru is dead and gone. Just like in 1979 in the GBC meeting, one of these managers said, now that Prabhupada is dead and gone, it's not practical to emphasize him as the guru. It's not accepting reality. This kind of offensive, blasphemous statement is typical of somebody who has been victimized by Maya, who has not understood the philosophy, who has not properly heard from the Acharya. Because Prabhupada is saying that Bhaktisiddhanta in 1973 is preaching Krishna consciousness all over the world. This is a very important point that we have to make. The Acharya is never dead and gone. This is foolish idea. This is atheistic idea. C'est une idée des athées. It's a very dangerous, insidious idea, because we see from that foolish idea, people start saying, oh, Prabhupada is not available to give Divyam Jnanam, to give transcendental knowledge. Prabhupada is always available. He's given Divyam Jnanam every single day, of course, provided somebody doesn't tinker or change his instructions. When Prabhupada gives the instruction, if somebody takes it upon themselves to change the instruction, that is very, very dangerous. Very dangerous.
I feel Prabhupada every day. I feel him.
That's wonderful. I feel Prabhupada every day. We can get the protection and the association of Srila Prabhupada every single day. Interestingly, in 1977, when I was in Vrindavan in the Gurukul, as a matter of fact, I see here that Ram Raghava Prabhu is there. He was a student in the Gurukul at the time. And Srila Prabhupada asked me on several occasions, I had the service of massaging his feet at night for a few weeks. And Prabhupada sometime would ask me, how is the Gurukul progressing? How do you teach the children? What do you teach them? What do you discuss with these children? What is the program? So many instructions Prabhupada gave. And one time Prabhupada said that these children are the future of our movement, because he was expecting that they would become future preachers. Now, this is a very important point, because there seems to be a misunderstanding with some individuals. Unfortunately, the reality is that many of these children were not properly cared, were not properly trained, and unfortunately abused. But Srila Prabhupada is very concerned. That's why, as part of these discussions, Prabhupada spent quite a bit of time explaining to me how he wanted the children, and he said also all the devotees, how they should study his books. Because I asked him several times, why do you put the word for word? And Prabhupada one time said, in Sanskrit, it's called pratipada artha, that each word is given a meaning. He says, this is a system that is used by many great acharya, Vaishnava acharyas, when they explain the meaning of verses in the Bhagavatam or the Vedanta Sutra or Shastra. He says, this is the system of teaching that the acharya repeats the Sanskrit word, and then the student has to repeat. Now, in his books, he does give the Sanskrit and gives the English. And he says, by doing this, they will remember. And it says you should attentively read the translation I have given and read the whole purport. Then Prabhupada said you should pull out any Sanskrit or Bengali words, whether it's one word, two words, or an entire verse. This should be pulled out and make a list of all these words, whether it's Bengali verses, because we see that Prabhupada many times is just quoting from a verse. He'll give one line or two words. Prabhupada says, make a list of those. Then Srila Prabhupada explained, make a list of all the example or analogies that are given in the purport, make a separate list. Then Prabhupada says you should make a comprehensive list of all the major points in the purport. Then you should make a list of questions. Make a list of questions and answer the questions from the purport. Prabhupada says this is the system of studying that you should do. Because many times people ask, well, why do you spend so much time quoting Sanskrit and Bengali? Or because this was Prabhupada's instruction, at least that's the instruction he gave me. Now, I'm not a very qualified person. I'm not a very scholarly person, but I try to follow that instruction of Srila Prabhupada. It's the same thing about reciting verses like the Shikshastakam, the Goswami Astakam, the Damodara Astakam, and the Brahma Samhita. Prabhupada wanted these hymns that devotees should learn this. Also, for deity worship, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada recommended that people should chant the Purusha Sukta, which is a Vedic hymns that explains the creation of the material world. And by understanding Krishna as the creator, then one can be liberated and go back to Godhead. There's also the Sri Sukta, which is a hymn praising Lakshmi or Radharani. There's so many different, there's Narayana Sukta, Narayana Upanishad. For example, if we look in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text number 8, chapitre 10, verset numéro 8, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. There's a beautiful explanation. Krishna is explaining that everything comes from me. But if you look in the purport, Prabhupada is quoting so many Sanskrit verses. These are taken from the Purusha Sukta, taken from different Vedic literatures, from Narayana Anuvakya, from Narayana Upanishad. Many of these verses are quoted by Sanatana Goswami, by Rupa Goswami, and Gopal Bhatta Goswami in the Hari Bhakti Vilas and other literature. In other words, our Gaudiya Sampradaya, there's no dispute here whether Narayana or Vishnu or Krishna is higher or lower. The Vaishnavas do not argue upon this. According to time, place, and circumstances, different acharyas have presented the philosophy, because we have to remember that both Ramanuja and Madhva were fighting against the Mayavadis, fighting against these Advaitins, exposing them. Just like today we read in that purport of Chaitanya Charitamrita, a very long explanation of Srila Prabhupada, explaining so many verses from Vedanta Sutra, exposing the fallacy or misunderstanding of Shankaracharya, and explaining so many very detailed explanations. Why did Prabhupada do that? So we could learn. I remember being in South India at Guru Kripa. He didn't waste time. One time he told one of these people, I'm not going to start talking to you till you move that tilak out of your head. If you claim that you're a follower of Adi Shankaracharya, and Guru Kripa said, well, Adi Shankaracharya says, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. To do Bhaja Govindam properly, you have to wear this Urdhva Pundra, this Vaishnava tilak. If you don't do that, you're not worshiping Bhaja Govinda properly. So if you claim you're a follower of Shankaracharya, you should wipe out this Tripundra. They put these ashes on their head. And the person was so bewildered. He told one of these people, so according to you, you say Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya, that Brahman is real and everything in the world is false. So this mat over here, is that false or is that real? If it's real, you've defeated your philosophy. If it's false, well, you can give it to us. We'll use it nicely. So which is which? The person has no answer. They still cannot answer. So very good question. And you brought a very important point that you brought about today being a very important day for us. Because Prabhupada explains that appearance and disappearance. Just like when Prabhupada was in Atlanta in 1975, for the appearance day of his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he's explained that we have no such thing that is dead and gone. This is not spiritual understanding. This is the first point. All of these so-called debate about living guru, this is the false argument. When Prabhupada said, it is not that he is dead and gone, it is not spiritual understanding, that is the first point to understand. We're not supposed to think, oh, the acharya is dead. Now I'm going to jump on a trampoline and jump up and falsely declare that they had been appointed as acharya. That is very dangerous. That is very disrespectful. It is a false nonsense idea. And we've seen that so many people have been misled by this false propaganda. There are so many points in Prabhupada's books where he explains these things. Just like in Australia, there was one conversation where Prabhupada's books said, these books are representative of God. These purports by Srila Prabhupada are directly representative of God. When we read Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is directly God speaking and God's representative speaking. But no one has the authority to change these books. No one. They may think they do, but Srila Prabhupada said they do not. So this is it's actually a very important day for us to remember Srila Prabhupada, because we repeat every day, Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarani. Why did he come to America? Pourquoi que Prabhupada est venu en Amérique, est venu à Montréal, à Tokyo? Why did Prabhupada come to America, to Montreal, to Tokyo? To preach, to explain. In the Western countries, Paschatya means the Deshatarani, the Western countries, against this Mayavad and monism, nonsense ideas. That is why Prabhupada came. His Guru Maharaj was known as Simha Guru, Lion Guru. Now, we're not on this level, but we can try to explain, or even if we just read Srila Prabhupada's purports, like today, the very long purport, which we will continue next week. When we read these purports, this is direct association with Srila Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Krishna. This is the first point to understand. And once somebody understands this, then everything will become clear. Because we read today in the Chaitanya Charitamrita purport and Srila Prabhupada's explanation of the Gundicha Mandir, all of the different false, dangerous ideas or dangerous weeds that can infiltrate a practitioner's devotional service. Like Prabhupada is complaining about mystic yoga. And yet we see on the internet some disciples or pseudo-disciples practicing and teaching Hatha Yoga. What is that? Prabhupada gave no such instruction. Now people may say, oh, we're just doing bridge preaching. No. Our business is to do direct preaching. Preach like Prabhupada preached. Prabhupada said, do as I do. Don't imitate. There are so many instructions. If we were to take, for example, this purport we read today for Lord Chaitanya cleansing of Gundicha temple and make a list, like Prabhupada said, of all the major points in the purport, like if you have a bullet point of every major point, we would have so many points of discussion. Where is this being taught in that society? Where is this being discussed in this systematic way in that society? Just on this point about Hatha Yoga. Prabhupada, about this point about a reputed devotee. We see so many devotees busy trying to promote themselves. It's a blatant self-promotion and self-aggrandizement. Where did Prabhupada promote this? Nowhere. But we have to learn, we have to see. And then when somebody preaches some nonsense ideas, we'll be able to identify. We're not against anybody. We're not trying to criticize any devotee. But what we see from Prabhupada's books, from Prabhupada's purports, we can learn. This way we can distinguish between reality and illusion. On peut comprendre la différence entre la réalité et l'illusion. This is not difficult to do. It doesn't mean criticize him. C'est pas du critique. C'est pas de trouver des fautes. C'est fact-finding. Fact-finding, ça veut dire de trouver les faits exactement, la vérité. We're trying to find the truth from Srila Prabhupada to help us in our progressive march of practicing and preaching. So we'll leave it at that for now. Thank you very much for that question, Mataji. That was a very important point. And Rupesh Prabhu, if you'd like, maybe, unless somebody else has a question, anybody else is welcome for a question. Okay, we can proceed with the kirtan. and wrapping up the program. Rupesh Prabhu, would you like to, could you maybe put the kirtan? Rupesh Prabhu, are you there? Kirtan?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes. Hare Krishna.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you for arranging or managing the program. That's a very nice service, especially on this auspicious day. Prabhupada is watching us from the corner.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Let us offer our respectful obeisances to all the assembled Vaishnavas. Vanchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances. We all offer our respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord who can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desire trees, and who are full of compassion for the fallen souls. Thanks everybody for participating. Thanks Ram Raghava in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank your father for also coming briefly. And also Rochisa Mataji in Montreal, Rupesh Prabhu, Bhakta Rupesh Prabhu in Bombay or Mumbai, India. We have Bhakta Gopal in New Mexico, Albuquerque, Bhakta Michael Dillon in Yuba City, California, and everybody who participating. We greatly appreciate it. It's getting a little cold here. I have to put a hat on. We're expecting some snow tonight. But thank you very much. This is a very auspicious day for all of us. I want to thank Ram Raghava Prabhu for the beautiful Jagannath deities behind his head. and the beautiful pictures of the 6 Goswamis, Jagannath. I can't see everybody else there, but Lord Narasimha, there's Jagannath. Wow, beautiful, beautiful altar. And thank you, Father, for us for participating. Greatly appreciate that. And I'm sorry for reading so much today. I didn't have Vishwakarma Prabhu, but I really love Prabhupada's purports defeating the Mayavadis. Prabhupada was so happy with these, with the efforts. One time when we told them that we had gone to Coimbatore and tangled with the Mayavadis, Prabhupada was very, very happy. And Prabhupada told us that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was always very happy when his disciples would criticize the Mayavadis. So that was a very, very sweet purport. As a matter of fact, next week, we're still going to read several other pages from this purport. I believe on page 412, we have like 4 or 5 pages on this purport. This is Adi Lila, chapter 5, text number 41. Very, very sweet. Very sweet. Again, thanks everybody for participating. Ram Raghava Prabhu, it's very nice to see you. You kindly offer our regards to your good wife and your father and family. And Mother Rochi said, thank you for that very interesting question. Merci beaucoup pour cette question très intéressante. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,